I want to sit here, talk about this book, rave about how much I love it, but if I did, I unfortunately would be lying. Now, The Hunger Games is such a huge franchise, and there's a reason why. I also love The Hunger Games. I read it when it first came out, and I love the movie. I remember going to the cinemas, watching Mockingjay, watching part 2, and it was so exciting. I literally have the cup that has Katniss, Jennifer Lawrence, Mockingjay part 2 where I drank my little soda, and it was such a strong memory for me. However, you do have to admit that The Hunger Games has a cult following, and when Sunrise on the Reaping came out, it was very interesting because I looked at a lot of reviews, and obviously a lot of the reviews are highly positive, and while reading this book myself, I just didn't experience the same visceral reaction as everybody else. People were saying they were screaming, they were crying, they were throwing up, which obviously is an exaggeration. But while reading this book, I was just tired. I was considering DNFing it, but at that point, I was halfway through the book. I told myself I might as well just finish it to film this video. The concern that I have with the Sunrise on the Reaping is that it will follow the path of so many other fantasy series that have been loved, and because of that they get extended, and obviously it hasn't come to that point, but with fans asking for books from the point of view of Finnick and Joanna and Annie and their games, I'm scared that Suzanne Collins would decide to extend the series further and further, that we would get a bunch of books out in the Hunger Games world, and the more that these series get extended, the more inconsistencies it creates, and I call this the you lost a plot syndrome or the series fatigue disorder. The side characters turn into main characters, we get stories of the characters that we love, and let's be honest, we all eat it up. There is a point where you do get tired no matter how much you love a series. And to give you guys an example, we have the Shadowhunters world, and I love the Shadowhunters world. I grew up reading the series as well, but to give you guys a physical representation of how much the series has grown, we have the present, the Mortal Instruments. We have before the present, the Infernal Devices. We have the after the before, which is the last hours. And then we have the after the present. If you don't know what I'm talking about, basically we have the Mortal Instruments, which was published first. This is the main series that every other book is surrounded by. We then have the Infernal Devices, which is a prequel to the Mortal Instruments. And then we have The Last Hours, which is after the Infernal Devices, and it focuses on the kids of the characters in the Infernal Devices. We have The Dark Artifices, which is the sequel to the Mortal Instruments and about the characters that we see in the Mortal Instruments. Do you get what I'm saying? There are 16 books in the Shadowhunter world, and this is not including the novella. And this is what I'm worried about, that is going to happen to the Hunger Games franchise, where the series keeps growing and growing and growing, and we love it. Like, I love the Shadowhunter series so much, but it does get to a point where the plot tends to get a little bit messy, and you are kind of like, what is going on in this series? And at this point, it just feels like something that authors are doing to gain money. And there are so many examples of other fantasy books that do this as well. For example, Percy Jackson. Harry Potter is a whole different world. The amount of special editions, picture books, plays, a new TV show, and this series has been out for 28 years. We have the Grishaverse, Shadow Me, and there are so many other series that I have probably forgotten about. Look, I love the Hunger Games as much as the next person, but Sunrise on the Reaping is where I draw the line, and it's only the 5th book in the series. The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes was a good addition to the series. It was really interesting to read from Snow's point of view, as it takes place ages from Katniss' timeline, and it was interesting to read from his point of view and gain the context behind his manipulative and narcissistic tendencies, how he became the person that he is, and how he gained power, and his connection to District 12 and why he hates District 12 so much. In addition to that, we get the point of view of somebody outside of the game, someone who actually controlled the game and helped evolve the game, rather than someone who participated in the game. And I feel like the Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes added so much to the context of the world as we follow the 10th Hunger Game, and it really showed the development of what the Hunger Game was like originally and how it came to be within Katniss' timeline. The issue with The Sunrise on the Reaping is that I genuinely do not think that it is needed. I think it's a book that was written for fans, especially because after the Battle of Sombras and Stakes, then The Sunrise on the Reaping got released, and obviously a lot of people were really excited to hear about Haymitch's story because he is a very important side character and a very loved one. And I remember hearing that Sunrise on the Reaping was going to be released and being excited and talking to my friends about it and being excited for the movie and everything. But then when I read Sunrise on the Reaping, I thought to myself, is this book really needed? Imagine I'm at the library. I see the book on the shelves, the beautiful purple covers, and I decide, you know what, I'm going to pick this book up and I'm going to read it. However, I don't know it's part of a series. So I go home, I read the book, and I'm like, okay, yeah, it's a fine book. But what makes Haymitch special, besides the fact that he's a side character in the Hunger Games series? If I never read the Hunger Games series, I genuinely think that I wouldn't care about this book. Probably would have read it, went and then toss it away and never think about it again. The only reason why Sunrise on the Reaping works is because it's written about a character that we love. It really, really relies on the other books within the series because in the end, it's about a character, it's about a game that we've seen already, and without the context of the Hunger Games, I feel like the impact of this book isn't as large. Even though the Shadowhunter series are all interconnected, I don't think that you need to read all the books in the series for you to understand the world. It definitely will be helpful, but it's fine if you read the individual series alone. However, with Sunrise on the Reaping, you do really need to gain the context of the other books in the series to really understand the impact of the book. As I mentioned before, I do think that this book was written for the fans rather than for the actual world, because tell me why there are a bunch of random name droppings. We have Max, 𝐦𝐮𝐬𝐬, and Beatty, and we also get Plutarch, which I understand his involvement in this book as it shows how Haymitch and Plutarch got connected and how Haymitch became part of this rebel team. However, I don't understand why Max and 𝐦𝐮𝐬𝐬 was included in this book, because they could have had anybody else as District 12's mentors. They could have made up a random character, but no, they decided to include characters that we already knew from Catching Fire, and it just confused me because we never got to see Haymitch, Max, or 𝐦𝐮𝐬𝐬 interact in Catching Fire, and Haymitch even was exasperated when Katniss decides to choose them as her allies compared to the other tributes. Granted, everything is from Katniss' point of view, so it's not like she would care about the relationships between other people, but I personally feel like if you had someone who was your mentor, who was guiding you through the games, who gave you advice, who was also part of the rebellion, and who literally got tortured by your actions, I feel like I would have some sort of emotional bond, or at least I would acknowledge their presence. And I feel like the fact that they got tortured would have left Haymitch feel a little bit guilty. In Catching Fire, it felt like they didn't know each other at all. It felt like they only knew each other as tributes, but it never felt like they were mentors to Haymitch, which again, everything is from Katniss' point of view, so it's not like she would know. I do think that the reason why it wasn't referenced in Catching Fire was because this wasn't originally planned. Mags and 𝐦𝐮𝐬𝐬𝐬 was not originally planned to be Haymitch's mentors. A better idea would honestly just be to have random mentors that we never get introduced to again. Beatty also plays a huge part in this revolution, and what I don't understand is why he gave up the plan so quickly to Haymitch, and a part of it is probably because Beatty and Plutarch was in communication, and from the start Plutarch had his eye on Haymitch. I just don't know why he admitted so quickly that, yeah, Ampert is my son. He got chosen to be part of the game as a punishment for my past actions, and literally told about the plan in the arena in a room full of peacekeepers where there are probably microphones and cameras everywhere, and I do really question how they honestly didn't get caught. The mischaracterization of Snow in this book is an example of what I don't like when a series gets extended, where you kind of lose the character and you kind of forget how to write them. And this happens in so many books where in the beginning the characters are solidified, they're fleshed out, but the more you continue the series and you write this character from other people's point of view, they just lose their essence and then they no longer sound like themselves. I do not understand why Snow would invite Hamish to his house, show him a sign of weakness, and while he's doing that, threatens to kill him. He literally got oyster poisoning because he was poisoning someone else, but he decided to eat the oysters and poison himself as well. And then after he ate those oysters, he decides to drink milk, which I searched up if milk would help oyster poisoning, and I don't know why, because obviously it wouldn't. It probably would make it worse, but there's nothing threatening about a man who's throwing up in front of you. Even when he brought Katniss to his house, he had evidence to use against her while he was threatening her, and even when he showed signs of weakness, he was manipulating her. For example, when he started coughing up blood, it showed that he was sick, and that was a sign that in the end he was going to die, so what's the point of killing him? We get one scene of Snow in this book and he's throwing up. So what is Snow even trying to do? This scene does link to a scene that happens in the arena where Snow sends milk to Hamish as a sign of, if you drink this milk is poison and you'll die, giving him a chance to choose his own death by drinking poison rather than being killed by mutts. And that's a good connection, but I just don't see Snow threatening to kill someone while he is weak, especially because that scene was so strongly described that I genuinely felt sick while reading it as well. And I also questioned, how did Snow survive this one? How did he survive to 83 years old? I don't know. I also have an issue with Leonor Dove, and yes, Hamish, he's a 16-year-old boy in love, but I genuinely think that Leonor Dove is a definition of a manic pixie dream girl. A manic pixie dream girl, as defined by the internet, is a character type in fiction usually depicted as a young woman with eccentric personality quirks who serve as the romantic interest for a male protagonist. Leonor Dove is described to be rebellious and kind of something that Hamish cannot keep within his reach, where she has a strong and fiery personality and she's also a covey. So, there's a lot of history behind covey and the music and the artistry. Her role in the story is to be the love interest and to create an emotional impact, because at the end of the book she passes away. It got annoying to hear her name being repeated throughout the book. My girl, Hamish, I get you love her. I felt bad because he mentioned Leonor Dove more than he mentioned his mom and his brother. It was hard for me to root for their relationship as well because I didn't really care about them that much. Leonor Dove just had no substance. And with her death, my heart did drop for 2 seconds, but then after that, I just didn't really care because we all knew it was coming. And because I couldn't connect with her character, I just didn't really care about her death. I knew that we were supposed to be sad because Hamish was sad, but how am I supposed to be sad when I don't even know Leonor Dove? The only character that I really care about is not even Hamish. I don't even care about Hamish, if I'm being honest. I care about 𝐚𝐭𝐳𝐵𝐿y. I love this girl so much. I love her personality. She's the only character in the book that actually had substance. I love the relationship between Hamish and 𝐚𝐭𝐳𝐵𝐿y as well, because we got more of 𝐚𝐭𝐳𝐵𝐿y in this book than we got of Leonor Dove, and I thought that 𝐚𝐭𝐳𝐵𝐿y's character was more interesting to read about, even from the beginning when Hamish mentions that he doesn't really like her, and throughout the book as their relationship changes because they grow from people that don't really like each other to allies. And reading about her death did really pain me, even though I expected it. The fact that she got killed by ducks, literally eating her flesh, her death was the worst death that I read in this book. What I don't understand though is why all of a sudden Hamish is like, can I call you my sister as well? And then throughout the book, he's like, sis. And I don't know why Lee was so chill with this because she never called him bro. I also felt like the games went by too easily. 𝐻𝐻 being sent food and the food being such extravagant meals. And the whole reason why he got sent meals is because he had this image of being a rascal in the capital. I don't understand how that was appealing to the audience. I understand with Peter and Katniss, it was the whole idea of their love story, which made Katniss more attractive, but 𝐻𝐻 being a rascal, and even if they sent food to him, why did they have to send him like the most extravagant meals ever? I feel like the excessive sponsorships were added to the story mainly because he had no survival skills, so in the end they needed to find a way to give him food, otherwise he would be the one that's dying in the book. Something that I also struggle with is that I feel like the characters in this book are not written well because 𝐻𝐻 calls Lulu or Luella his sweetheart, and he's basically known her for, I guess, Luella's entire life. And I understand that they have a strong bond, which is why when they get chosen, 𝐻𝐻 instantly forms an alliance with Luella because he wants to protect her. But they hardly interact in the beginning of the book, and obviously she dies quickly, so we don't really get more of their relationship, but that's kind of part of the issue. I don't have a sense of their strong bond, so I don't understand why he calls her his sweetheart. I felt like 𝐚𝐭 and 𝐻𝐻's relationship made the most sense, and that is purely because 𝐚𝐭 had the most character. What I'm kind of interested in is how the reading order of the book changes the way that you view the book. I read The Hunger Games when it came out. When The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes came out, I read the book, and then obviously now I read Sunrise on the Reaping, and I question what would happen if we read it the way that it's supposed to be read from the order of the book. For example, if we read the Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes and then Sunrise on the Reaping and then the Hunger Games series, how would that impact your view of the overall series? Reading the Hunger Games first changes your whole perspective of the other books in the series. For example, with Sunrise on the Reaping, because I already knew what to expect and the fact that all the characters are gonna die, I think that also made it difficult for me to emotionally connect to the book, which is why I didn't really care when all the characters died because I expected it to happen. And I feel like reading it in the order that it's supposed to be read would have been more exciting because you could kind of see the evolution of the games, how it started, how it grew, and then how it ended. Does Sunrise on the Reaping really add anything to the story, or is it something that is being written just because fans want it? I'm worried that the series will get further stretched out because we already have fans asking for the other characters and their games. I think it comes to a point where these stories will get very repetitive. You get them being chosen as tributes, you get them training and being mentored and dressing up, and then you get them in the games, and then you read their point of views and you know that all the characters are going to die and the ending is going to be sad. And once multiple books come out, what exactly about the series is going to be exciting? I just feel like it will ruin the Hunger Games series. The Hunger Games is already perfect as it is. Even if it was just a trilogy, I would still love it the same. And why would you change or try to fix something that is perfect? Adding on to that, I feel like the Hunger Games is just not something that you can continue to grow because it's within this one world that is very, very isolated. Going back to the Shadowhunters, I'm just going to use that as my example. With Shadowhunters, if you don't know what it's about, it's set in this urban fantasy world where we have Shadowhunters and they basically can see and kill demons, and there's a bunch of stuff going on in the series which is too much for me to explain. Because the Shadowhunter world is so vast, we can follow different main characters and their story within different timelines. However, with the Hunger Games, it's just the Hunger Games. We have the different districts, the capitals, them participating in the games, but there's nothing more that you can get out of that. And the more you write books from the other characters' point of view, I feel like the more repetitive it gets. We will just consistently follow the characters as they get chosen as tributes, as they get mentored, as they get dressed up, as they train, and then they enter the games, and you already know what's going to happen. You know that everyone's gonna die. You know that it's going to be a sad ending. So what more do you really get out of the book? Now, I want to sit here and say that I enjoy this book, but the more that I talk about it, the less I think that I actually enjoy it. It just didn't really meet my expectations, and I obviously had a lot of expectations going into this book, especially because so many other people loved it as well and they spoke so highly of this book. And I think that's the issue. Referring back to what I said about the Hunger Games having a cult following, I think because of this, it's a little bit hard to say negative things about it, or I guess to be critical, because honestly it's kind of scary. I don't believe that everyone entirely loved this book, and whether you loved it or not, it's like, okay, it's whatever, it's your opinion. And obviously what I say in this video is all my opinion, so you can just agree to disagree, of course. I love reading theories about the Hunger Games though. It's so interesting to see what fans come up with, and I think a lot of people who make theories surrounding the Hunger Games are very, very smart, because my brain would not make those same connections, which is why I love reading theories. But sometimes I think theories are either pulled out of thin air, they are taken out of nothing, or they are written better than the book. For example, the theories may not actually be what the author meant, but because this person interpreted it this way and they share their theories, I don't know. It's really interesting to read it. Going back to the main issue of my video, I'm not saying that Suzanne Collins should stop writing books within the Hunger Games franchise. If she wants to do that, of course she can. And I know that there are going to be so many people, so many fans who love these books. If she does come out with more books, I probably won't read them. I would probably watch the movies instead, because I'm really excited for the movie to come out, especially with the casting. What I'm saying is that I can see it going down the paths of many other very popular fantasy series, and sometimes it's better to just keep the magic within that one series.